1. I've been working bars since the age of 18. The rule of thumb with drinks, usually, is that you don't leave them unattended. If the drinks are left unattended, they get collected. Anyway, this one night it was closing time. Last orders were called and the bar had been shut down, and we're now at the stage of the night where the bouncers are asking people to drink up and leave. The glass collector we had on that night was collecting glasses, and comes across a table where one glass had a drip of a drink left. They asked the people sitting at the table if the drink was finished with, and they replied yes. So the glass collector did their job and put the glass into the glass wash. I was sweeping up the floor when the glass collector approached, saying there was a woman at the end of the bar asking where her drink was and demanded it be replaced. Turns out this glass that had a drip of a drink left was hers, and it was now gone. It was 2 a.m., the bar's closed, restock had been done, and it's time for people to leave. And because the glass collector had the approval to take the glass, I said that we would not be replacing a whole drink, even if they did not have the approval for the glass to be collected. This woman has still left the drink unattended, and the rule is if the drink is left unattended, it's to be collected. This woman then stormed behind the bar to where I was sweeping, after she's seen me say that I would not be replacing the drink, demanding I pour her another drink because she paid money and she wasn't finished with it. I replied that there was only a drip of alcohol left in it, and that she had left it unattended. I also explained the importance of not leaving drinks unattended. I said if the bar was still open, I would have allowed her to pay for another one, but the bar's closed and the tills have already been sent to do cash up for the night, so there's nothing I could do at this point, and calmly explained she would not be having a drink replaced, and she needs to get from behind the bar, as she cannot be there, as it goes against our licensing. She's drunk, so obviously she gets irate, demanding how she's a customer and always right. I said there are rules I have to follow in my job and my hands are tied, and that she needs to go before she's forcefully removed by the bouncers. She doesn't take this too kindly, and now she's in my face shouting profanity, and still demanding a free drink. At this point I've had enough and called a bouncer over to remove her from behind the bar because she can't be there. I just wanted to finish my shift and go home. I've just done a 12-hour shift and my knees feel like they're about to buckle under me. She's clocked that this bouncer has been called over, turns back to me and lunges herself at me with all her force. I'm a small person, but I've always known how to take care of myself with self-defense classes, so I've managed to lock her into place on the floor, whilst the bouncers work around me to get her up and out of the bar now. She's still swinging her arms, wailing like a toddler who's just had a toy taken from them. She has managed to catch me and mark my face with her nails. She was barred on the spot for attacking a member of staff and reported to the police, where she was done for assault, since it was all caught on the security cameras. Completely baffled how entitled this woman was acting over a drip of a drink. It's been a while since that happened, but still to this day it gives me a little bit of anxiety that I now always make sure the latch door is locked when we're closing up for the night. Moral of the story, which should always be a given when you're out drinking, please don't leave your drinks unattended. We have posters on our walls and behind the bar to not do that, otherwise they will be collected. 2. If you'd like a good screw around and find out, you'll love this story. It involves my dad, uncle, and granddad. A few years ago, Granddad died in a rehab facility as a result of gross negligence. Dad and Uncle opened a lawsuit on behalf of Granddad's estate. It drags on and looks like it's going nowhere. 2 years ago, Dad died a couple months after a cancer diagnosis. It was sudden, and Uncle had promised him his kids were now his. He'd look out for us. I was the executor of Dad's estate and did the usual business of selling property, closing accounts, etc. Since Uncle was the executor of Granddad's estate, I asked him if it was still open and what the lawsuit's status was. Uncle said the lawsuit went nowhere and the estate was closed. This is where I made a mistake. I took him at his word. Dad's estate was settled and closed last winter. My siblings and I split everything according to the will, and life continued. In April, my uncle called me, telling me he wanted to gift my siblings and me a small amount of money. The lawsuit on behalf of Granddad was paying out, and Uncle wanted to give us $10,000 to split. Then he told me Dad's estate needed to be reopened to claim it. There were so many red flags you would think the circus was in town. I played nice, thanked him, and immediately called the courthouse where Granddad and Dad's estates were established. The clerk told me not only was Granddad's estate still open, but there was also a large bond on a sum of money recently placed. Did I want the name of the lawyer on file? Yes, I did. I called the lawyer, and the receptionist exclaimed that they were trying to find my contact info. The lawyer gets on the line, and as one of the beneficiaries, he's able to fill me in on everything. Right after Dad was diagnosed, the lawsuit for Granddad was settled. Dad died without knowing the rehab admitted their part in causing his father's death and paid out a settlement. The money sat in limbo for 18 months, through the funeral and sale of properties. The first business day after Dad's estate closed, Dad petitioned for the release of funds as the sole beneficiary. The estate lawyer discovered Uncle wasn't the sole beneficiary and requested my contact info, which Uncle claimed he did not have. The lawyer tells him that my siblings and I were still his beneficiaries, even though Dad's estate was closed. We were still entitled to Dad's share. This is when Uncle called me with this tale of wanting to gift us a small amount. The total sum of the lawsuit, after taxes and lawyers' fees, was around $150,000. Since Dad and Uncle were the sole beneficiaries of Granddad's estate, they would each get half. Guys, I was furious. I called the siblings and we agreed to play it cool. The lawyer for Granddad's estate knew Uncle was being shady and never intended to split the money, so he refused to release the funds to Granddad's estate. The checks would go to Uncle and Dad's estate directly. I decided to bide my time with Uncle and not reveal the extent of what I knew. 2 more months go by, the estate is reopened, and the bank account is established. This is when Uncle finds out through the lawyer that the funds would not be given to Uncle to disperse, but would go directly to the beneficiaries. Uncle calls me spitting mad, saying he did all the legwork of getting the lawsuit done and deserved payment. He felt giving us $10,000 was fair. I told him the courts had a system for that sort of thing, and he would get his hours and time through the lawyers. Uncle went into a rant that Dad owed him money and that Uncle would bill us for so many hours. We would get less than $10,000 if we didn't agree to the 10. I told him to try. Uncle did try. Granddad's estate lawyer wouldn't say how many versions of the application he rejected before they arrived at an acceptable rate the judge would agree to. Uncle wanted us to pay for a grave plot, since Dad died first and took the last plot in the family graveyard. He wanted repayment for all sorts of things that had nothing to do with Granddad's estate. The poor estate lawyer had to try to beat estate laws and inheritance into Uncle's head, but Uncle was determined to take both his share and Dad's.
I'm the executor, and they don't deserve a thing!
My siblings and I accepted the first reasonable rate and walked away with half of the remaining balance. Uncle never realized the sum would come off the top, not deducted from Dad's share alone. Despite the paper trail of deception he left, he still feels he's the victim, and we stole from him. The saddest thing about betrayal is that it never comes from your enemies. It comes from friends and loved ones. 3. This happened years ago, before pandemic old. This is a story about my no longer godmother. At the time of the story, my godmother is also our next-door neighbor. She became my godmother because she is the wife of Godfather, which is one of my father's close friends. Also, note, they have 4 children with my godfather. One of the earlier stories that I remember that made our family despise her is her cheating on her husband and not caring if anyone sees. My grandmother heard stories from my other neighbors that while her husband was at work, she would call one of her old boyfriends to make out in front of their house like it's normal. At first I could not believe it, What made me believe it was when I was walking at the nearby mall and saw her hold the arm of another man in a lover's way. I thought that she would not want to be recognized by someone she knows, so I intentionally looked away, pretending to check the stores on the other side. But she bravely walked towards me and tapped on my shoulder to greet me, knowing that I know she's still with my godfather. Even though she's the one cheating in the relationship, she suspects, even clearly it's not true, that godfather is getting close with one of the female co-workers she would see when she'd visit him at his workplace, and make this co-worker quit her job, or would trap her, and that would make the management fire them. The story that made my father cry is when my father gave her a job at their employer's company. Just a side note. My father is a very well-trusted manager at the company, and very close to the owner. So close he is like his right-hand man. Since at that time my father was still skeptical of the stories of the snake, and in their current state they needed more money with their children, 2 of which were almost going to college, and tuition fees were raising high, and they'd also moved to another house, so they were much in debt. My father directly asked the owner to hire her as a second manager at another location. Since my father was very trusted by the owner, she was hired as a manager at another location. One of the tasks my father was entrusted every few weeks is to visit the company's other offices to check on their workers on location. While my father was on his visit to her location, she set a trap that would get my father fired for harassment. Since the laws for offices are mostly women-biased, he was fired after around 15 years of excellent service and loyalty. The owner would like to not fire my father because so far he's the best manager he had, but the laws are the laws, and he was just following them. As a negotiation with my father, he would fire him, but he would greatly recommend him to his friend, and so he would be hired there, and he would also find a reason to fire the snake because of this incident. In the end, what happened to my father was good and bad news. He was hired at the other company immediately, but he would need to move to another province for a job. But also good news is he would be coming back home every few weeks, and was promised to be at home during the major holidays. As for the snake of a woman, after a few months of working, after my father was fired, she was also fired. But the reason was not disclosed for privacy purposes. After the last story, we cut all ties and communication with her and her family by association, so we're not sure what happened to them. 4. So, I am a 41-year-old woman, and have been living in this apartment complex for 5 years now. I had some ongoing trouble with a neighbor who is, not to sound unladylike, an entitled asshole. He blasts music when he's home and smokes. You can smell it in the stairway. I generally try not to say anything to my neighbors, cause we'll have to get along, and hey, he usually doesn't blast his music past 10 p.m., which is the quiet time, so I let it slide the few times he does. But he has this other thing that is affecting the residents and is downright rude. We have a small parking lot behind the building, and there is a small driveway to get in and out. There's plenty of parking in the complex, which houses, I guess, 150 residents. However, the entrance and exit to this parking lot is a driveway, and you can't park there because it is a fire zone, but my neighbor downstairs, a male about 22, will often park there. Many of the neighbors have been annoyed as it is very narrow and is extremely hard to go down it when a car is illegally parked on one side. There have been a couple of times when I and others had to go on the sidewalk to avoid hitting his car or van, which can be dangerous. So last night, I came home a bit late and had to park in a different lot. Really, it was probably like not even 10 feet further a walk for me, but because that rear lot I like was full and there was still plenty of parking elsewhere in the complex. Well, the car was parked in the fire zone, so I took a picture. About 2 hours later, another car was now parked behind it in the fire zone. I took another picture. A neighbor tried to enter the lot. There was some parking available now, and after he parked, he asked me whose cars they were. I advised I wasn't sure. He was very upset because he had to get on the other side to avoid hitting them. I tried to call the towing number that is posted on all the signs telling us where not to park, or we would be towed. I then knocked on my neighbor's door to ask who the cars belonged to, and he said his guests, and he just casually mentioned he told them to park there. I explained they need to move their cars that were blocking traffic. He did so. This morning I stopped by the leasing office after getting some advice to do so, and explained this wasn't the first time it happened, but it was the first time I was speaking up about it, and other neighbors had this issue with him. This was a fact. I take walks through the complex often, and generally am friendly with my neighbors, so we have talked about it before. The head of maintenance was there and told me I had any issue to call the emergency number for after hours, and tell them to get the tech on duty to call me, and to say he dropped his name here as Bob, said to call the towing company directly because they have his private direct line, and they will have the cars towed. Well, at about 4:30 p.m. today, my neighbor came knocking on my door. I opened it a little, and we chatted. He told me he didn't appreciate how I had insulted his guests by calling them idiots. I didn't recall saying that, but maybe I did. I did explain, due to having a neurological disorder and it raining yesterday, I was in a lot of pain. So while I don't recall saying that, I may have, and I apologize for that. He went on and on about how he is a firefighter and he would know if there was a fire or would move the car. I tried to explain to him that regardless he can't just park in a fire zone. That there are over 100 people in this complex and there are plenty of parking, and we all have our own situations that don't justify parking in the fire zone. He ranted about how much he pays in rent, and I told him we all pay rent. For example, I have a neurological disorder, as I mentioned. The guy across the hall is a military veteran. There are elderly people in the complex, and when he parks there, it blocks the traffic for everyone. Anyway, he basically told me he knows the cops in town, and I advised him next time I'm just going to have the cars towed, and he pouted and said he was not going to park there anymore, so not to worry. I was shook up, so after I calmed down, I went across the hall. There are 4 apartments in these buildings, and asked my neighbor if they overheard the conversation. He did, and advised me he will let the office know. He also advised he will call if the neighbor is parking there again tonight, because he didn't know it was him, and he was upset as well. I then went downstairs to see my other neighbor, and they heard him as well, and told me he too would be speaking to property management office in the morning. I then texted my very close childhood friend, and told him about the situation with my neighbor flaunting his status as a firefighter here in town. This man was my senior prom date. He advised me that what he did was wrong and very unprofessional by saying that. And he should know. He was the former fire chief for the department that my neighbor currently works in, and so was his father, in fact. The current one is still a very good friend of the family. Five. I am a decorator, and began working with a couple of bad apples over a year ago, when I was still getting established independently. This one client has been obsessed with getting the best deal and bargain on every single item we have purchased. This is a $3 million home, and she will squabble over even a $10 price difference. She has zero respect for my livelihood. During design presentations, she whips out her laptop to search for cheaper versions of my selections. She owns a business that has nothing to do with design, and used her tax ID to fraudulently open wholesale accounts with my vendors, which are only for members of the trade. So disrespectful. I have devoted years to curating my list of vendors and learning how to procure beautiful prices, only for someone so entitled to go around me to buy wholesale instead of purchasing the product through me and violating my policy. This woman has an eagle eye for defects that she uses to try to get credits and refunds. She ordered her own shades and got the wrong size, then spent hours on the phone until customer service agreed to give her another damn credit. She manipulated my plumber and carpenter into lowering their rates, using this tone and acting as if she is on a separate class than them. This woman thinks she is entitled to decide how much she thinks someone is worth, and how much she feels like paying after the work is done. After over a year, we haven't completed much. I have redesigned some rooms 3 times, and helped on rooms that weren't even on the scope, because I just wanted something to get done so I can collect my check and run for the hills. Finally, I said I cannot continue the project without charging her a new fee. We have gone way over the time I charged for, and there's no end in sight. She hasn't focused, she has gotten caught up in minute details and literal dollars and cents at every turn. She derails meetings by changing focus from room to room. I sent her the bill for the balance owed and deducted the last credit she wanted. This was unacceptable to her. I should waive this fee and send her a check for the credit. What about the hours upon hours of wasted time where she asked for redesigns again and again? She pointed out this is a word-of-mouth business, and she already has an incredible new designer who doesn't mind her stealing their vendors and has cheaper prices, I guess. I told her to go ahead and see how things go if she behaves the same way with this new decorator. I called the vendor for her dining room wallpaper, and she has opened an account with them. My vendor revoked her access, and she will not be able to order the wallpaper unless she pays retail. Too bad, because my price was below retail. Classic entitled person fuck-up. It's a small victory, but it helps ease the pangs and disgust and violation. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Idiots in the Wild, episode 148. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Do hit that like button before you go, and if you'd like early access to the videos, you can get that through my Patreon. Click the link in the description and it takes you right to it. Support me there for as little as $1 a month. You'll also find a link to the Hellfreezer merchandise store to get yourself some mugs and hoodies and t-shirts and the like. If you really enjoyed the video and you'd like to leave a tip, then you can hit that little heart with a $sign below the video and select the tip of your choice. If you choose to do so, thank you kindly. No other business today, so let's move right along to Hellfreezer's question of the day. And today's question is... And today's question comes thanks to Belgian Waffle. This was suggested on the question of the day room on the Discord server. I have a little room there for people to leave question suggestions if they'd like. It helps a lot. And the question is, if you could live in the universe or world of your most favorite franchise, just as you are now, no special powers, but you, as you are with your current possessions and money converted, how long would you survive, and how would you spend that time in this world and universe? Well, for me, that's very, very easy. I would choose to live in the world of Star Trek The Next Generation, specifically that era, from then onward, because they have the best technology, and they live in what they call a post-scarcity society, as in everyone has a roof over their head, everyone has food and a place to live. Right, so assuming in that world I could find the house I live in currently and live there, and I would probably get myself a little holodeck installed in one of the spare rooms, so me and I hope my fiancé would join me. I wouldn't want to live there alone. That would be terrible. So I could live on Earth. I certainly wouldn't want to start surfing Starfleet. That's how you die. Live on Earth and just chill and pursue whatever I want, because nobody's struggling to survive. So you can get jobs, certainly, to stop yourself from being bored, but you can pursue the things that interest you. And that is a world I think we should all aspire to. Let me know what your answers are in the comment below. And with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourself.